It was a Tuesday, which should have been like any other Tuesday. It wasn't a special date, no significant occasion or anniversary. Just a regular evening, really. But the feeling I had that night, I'll never forget it. I wasn't the kind of guy who would make a scene or raise alarms over little things. I wasn't that guy. I trusted people, especially my wife, Noelle. Trust was something I didn't question. Maybe I should have. The evening started like every other. Noelle came home from work around 5:30 p.m., looking tired but still smiling, as usual. She kissed me on the cheek, dropped her purse on the kitchen counter, and told me she was going out with a few of her friends from the book club. Nothing strange there, right? She had done it 100 times before. Just dinner, she said casually, her eyes skimming her phone as she scrolled through something. I nodded, trying not to notice how distracted she seemed. The phone was always in her hands these days. But, hey, I couldn't be the one to complain. I was on my phone half the time too, answering emails or reading news. Have fun, I said, as she quickly slipped on her jacket. I'll probably just stay in and watch a game tonight. She smiled and walked out without another word, as if there was nothing odd about the whole thing. But as soon as she closed the door behind her, I felt something shift. A strange discomfort crept up my spine. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired, or maybe I hadn't had enough caffeine. Maybe I was just overthinking. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The night passed slowly, and I did what I usually do when Noelle is out. Watched the game, grabbed a beer, and spent time on my laptop. Yet, no matter how hard I tried to focus, something gnawed at me. I couldn't stop glancing at the clock, wondering when she'd be home. She was supposed to be back around 9 p.m., but by 10:30 p.m., there was still no sign of her. I tried calling twice. No answer. I wasn't worried yet, but something about the silence didn't feel right. It wasn't like Noelle to disappear without a word, even if she was just having fun with her friends. She was always the one to text me or call if plans changed. Around midnight, I sent her a text. Hey, you okay? A simple, innocent message, but as soon as I hit send, I felt a pit form in my stomach. Why was I even questioning this? Was I just being paranoid? But then, the reply came. It wasn't what I expected. Staying at Rachel's tonight. Don't wait up. It wasn't the first time she'd stayed at a friend's place, but Rachel, her friend Rachel, wasn't the type to have spontaneous sleepovers. Noelle always came home, and she'd always tell me in advance if she needed to stay out late. Something about the message felt wrong. I couldn't place it. It was short, almost curt, like she was trying to keep it casual, but something in me bristled. I laid in bed, staring at my phone, as the hours ticked by. It wasn't just the fact that she was out late. It was that something felt hidden. I tried to push the thought out of my mind. She's just tired, I told myself. Just needs to relax. But as the minutes turned into hours, I realized I couldn't sit here anymore. I didn't want to overreact, but something told me I needed to find out what was going on. I couldn't explain it. I just knew I had to. By 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I put on my jacket and grabbed my keys. I wasn't going to just sit here and wait. Something in me snapped. I drove to Rachel's apartment. It wasn't far, just a few blocks. But with every turn I made, I could feel my heart pounding harder in my chest. I didn't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe Rachel's place was empty, and Noelle was just with someone else. Or maybe, just maybe, I'd find something that would explain this sudden, late-night behavior. As I pulled into the parking lot of the building, I saw her car. The same one she'd been driving for years. It was parked in a spot near the entrance, just a few spaces away from the door to the building. My stomach churned. She was here. This wasn't just a stay at Rachel's situation. She was here. I parked my car and sat there for a moment, just staring at the building. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what I might find, but I was already too far in. I couldn't back out now. I walked up to the door of the apartment building, my mind racing. I knocked on Rachel's door, the one place I knew I could find Noelle. I waited. There was no answer. But then I heard something, a faint noise coming from inside, footsteps. The door opened slightly, and Rachel stood there, looking surprised to see me. Evan, what are you doing here? She asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of the music playing from inside the apartment. I need to talk to Noelle, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Rachel hesitated for a moment before looking over her shoulder, then back at me. She's not here, Evan. I felt the weight of those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked past her into the apartment, but it was empty. The bed wasn't disturbed. and there was no sign that anyone had stayed the night. Where was she? Rachel must have seen the confusion on my face because she stepped aside. She didn't stay here last night. She left hours ago. I thought you knew. A cold wave of realization hit me all at once. I had no idea what was going on, but I had a sinking feeling that I was about to find out. And it wasn't going to be good. I couldn't believe what Rachel had just said. Noelle hadn't stayed with her? But where had she gone? Why didn't she tell me? I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind spinning. Rachel saw the panic on my face. She stepped aside and opened the door a little wider, letting me take a hesitant step inside. The apartment was dark, only dim lights from the street lamps filtering in through the blinds. Maybe you should sit down, Rachel suggested, her voice quieter now. I ignored her offer and walked past her, heading straight for the couch. I wasn't going to sit down. I needed answers. Where's Noelle, Rachel? I asked again, my voice sharper this time. Rachel seemed to hesitate before responding. I really don't know, Evan. She wasn't here when I got back from my shift. She said she was meeting someone, but that's all I know. Meeting someone. My stomach twisted. Who was she meeting? Why hadn't she told me? Why did she lie about staying here? I could feel my pulse quicken as a sick feeling spread across my chest. Something wasn't right. Why didn't she tell me about this? I muttered, more to myself than to Rachel. She didn't answer right away, looking down at her feet. Maybe she was embarrassed, Rachel offered softly. You know how Noelle gets sometimes. She doesn't always like to open up about everything. I was having trouble processing her words. I wanted to believe that. Really, I did. But deep down, a nagging voice in my head was screaming that this was more than just a misunderstanding. What do you mean, embarrassed? I asked, my voice rising a little. What could she possibly be embarrassed about? Rachel shifted uncomfortably. Evan, I really don't think this is something I should be involved in. You need to talk to her directly. This isn't something I can explain for her. I could feel my patience thinning. So, you're telling me that you have no idea where she is, but you're still trying to protect her? Rachel, I need answers now. I stood up, turning to face her. Rachel's eyes darted to the side, clearly uncomfortable. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I'm not protecting anyone. But if you're looking for Noelle, maybe it's time to stop asking me and start looking for her yourself. Those words stung more than I expected. I was furious, confused, and desperate for answers. I needed to know where she was, and I needed to know now. I walked out of Rachel's apartment, my hands shaking, my thoughts a whirlwind. I got into my car and started driving. I had no plan, no destination, but I couldn't sit around any longer, waiting for Noelle to come home and pretend like everything was fine. Something was wrong, and I had to figure out what. I kept thinking about the small, cryptic details, the vague texts, the lie about staying with Rachel, the way she'd been acting recently. Had I missed something? Had I been blind to the signs? As I drove through the streets, I tried to calm myself down. I told myself that maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe I was overreacting. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the pieces didn't fit. I couldn't let this go. Eventually, I ended up at a parking lot near a bar we both used to frequent. It was a dive, but it had always felt like home. I didn't know why I was there. Maybe something inside me just told me to go. I parked and sat there for a few minutes, just staring at the entrance. The neon lights buzzed above me, and I could hear the low hum of music spilling out from the door. It felt like the kind of place Noelle would go to when she needed space, when she wanted to be away from everything. But if she was here, why hadn't she told me? I got out of the car and walked toward the door. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find. Maybe Noelle sitting at the bar, laughing with a friend. Maybe just a clue that would explain everything. When I opened the door, the noise hit me like a wave. The low chatter, the clinking of glasses, the smell of cheap beer and fried food. It felt suffocating, and yet I couldn't turn back now. I scanned the room, my heart beating faster with each passing second. There was no sign of Noelle at the bar, but I noticed a familiar face in the corner. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized it. It was Tom, her coworker. I had never liked Tom. He was always friendly with Noelle, too friendly for my taste. But Noelle always reassured me that they were just friends. Nothing more. But as I stood there, watching him laugh with some people at the table, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Tom had been at the office late last week when Noelle said she'd been working late, too. I dismissed it at the time, but now, the pieces were starting to fit together. Tom had been a part of her life more than I knew. and I wasn't sure if I was ready to find out just how deep that connection ran. My heart pounded as I stood in the dimly lit bar, eyes locked on Tom, her coworker. He was laughing too loudly, clinking glasses with some people I didn't recognize. But it was the way he was looking at the group, a little too relaxed, a little too comfortable. I tried to tell myself it meant nothing, that I was overthinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I stood at the door for a while, not knowing whether to walk over to him or turn around and leave. My mind raced, running through the last few days. Noelle's odd behavior, the vague messages, the way she had avoided answering my calls. Why had she been so secretive? Why had she lied? I didn't know what I was looking for, but the truth was, I needed to confront Tom. I had to understand why he was here and what role he played in all of this. I finally took a deep breath and walked toward his table. As I approached, I felt the air in the room shift, like everyone could sense the tension building. Tom looked up, his expression frozen when he saw me. There was a brief flash of surprise, then something else. His smile wavered for a second before he quickly masked it with a casual grin. "Evan, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice just a bit too loud. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't need to. The way he was acting, I knew he had been expecting me. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice calm but the edge was unmistakable. "You here with anyone? Noelle, maybe?" The table fell silent for a moment. Tom shifted in his seat, glancing at the people around him as if looking for a way to deflect. "Noelle? Nah, man. She wasn't at the office tonight," Tom replied, shrugging. "Why?" I narrowed my eyes. "So you haven't seen her tonight?" He laughed nervously. "Nah, man, haven't seen her since lunch. You know how it is, busy days. Anyway, we're just hanging out here, nothing big." I could feel a knot tightening in my chest. Something wasn't adding up. His eyes darted around again, but he didn't seem to want to meet my gaze directly. "You sure about that?" I asked, leaning in slightly, my voice quieter now. "Because she said she was meeting you tonight. Said she was going to be at Rachel's, but I didn't see her there." Tom's expression faltered for a split second. He quickly regained his composure, but it was too late. I had seen it. The brief look of panic in his eyes. I wasn't imagining it. "Look, Evan, I don't know what you're thinking, but I swear, I'm not involved in any of this. You should talk to Noelle. Man, I'm just here having a drink with friends." His voice had a forced calmness, but I could hear the subtle tremor in it. It was almost as if he was trying too hard to sound convincing. I didn't believe him, but I didn't press him any further. There was something more to this, something that Tom was hiding. I wasn't going to get the answers here, not from him, not tonight. I turned on my heel and walked out of the bar, trying to keep my mind focused. I needed to find Noelle. I needed to understand what was going on, what she was hiding, and why Tom seemed so damn nervous when I brought her up. But as I stepped into the cool night air, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Noelle. "Sorry, I didn't mean to worry you. I'll explain everything soon. Just need some space tonight." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keys. She didn't want me to worry? Then why had she been so secretive? Why had she lied? My heart raced again as a thought hit me. Was she with Tom tonight? I stood there, staring at the text from Noelle. I could feel the weight of the words pressing down on me. "I'll explain everything soon." I couldn't help but feel a mix of confusion and anger rising in my chest. Explain what? What was so important that she couldn't tell me now? It had been hours since I last heard from her, and now this? A vague text, no details, no attempt to reassure me, just more uncertainty. My mind raced, replaying the events of the evening, the weird behavior, the lies, and now, Tom's nervousness. I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let it go. Whatever was happening, I needed answers. I decided to head home, hoping that maybe, just maybe, Noelle would be there, and I could get the truth out of her. As I drove, the silence in the car felt suffocating. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone out the window, to do anything to get rid of the feeling crawling under my skin. When I finally got home, I was almost afraid to open the door. But I had to. I needed to face this head on. I walked inside, the air heavy with tension. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Noelle's purse was on the counter, her shoes lined up neatly by the door. But she wasn't there. I checked the bedroom, the bathroom, nothing. Just emptiness. I felt a surge of frustration. Where the hell was she? I turned back to my phone and stared at her message again. "Just need some space tonight." The words echoed in my mind. What did that even mean? Noelle had never needed space before. We were always close, always open with each other. This wasn't like her. As I scrolled through my messages, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A message from a number I didn't recognize. It was from earlier that night. "Hey, can't wait to see you later. I'll be at the usual spot. Don't be late." The message was short, but the implications were heavy. The usual spot? What did that even mean? My mind was spinning. Who was this person? And why hadn't Noelle mentioned them? She always told me where she was going, who she was with. I quickly dialed her number. It rang 3 times before going to voicemail. My frustration was boiling over. I couldn't just sit here and wait anymore. I grabbed my jacket and left again, heading for the place she'd mentioned. I didn't even know what to expect when I got there, but I had to see it for myself. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white with tension. The usual spot. It had to be somewhere she'd been before, somewhere she trusted. As I drove through the familiar streets, I found myself outside a small, dimly lit cafe. The kind of place we used to visit together on lazy Sunday mornings. My heart sank. Could it be? Was she meeting someone here? I parked and sat there for a moment, staring at the windows. The cafe was nearly empty, except for one table. A couple sat in the corner, laughing softly. I couldn't see their faces from here, but something about the scene felt wrong. I had to know. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the door. Every step felt like it was leading me deeper into a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I walked into the cafe, the bell above the door jingling as I pushed it open. The smell of freshly brewed coffee hit me instantly, but it did little to calm the anxiety gnawing at my insides. My eyes scanned the room, looking for any sign of Noelle. There were a few people scattered around, but no one that stood out, except for the couple in the corner. They were sitting close together, their heads bent toward each other, speaking in hushed tones. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why did it feel like I was being pulled into a web of lies and secrets that I couldn't escape? I took a few more steps into the cafe, my heart racing as I approached the counter. The barista smiled at me, but I didn't return the gesture. I was too distracted, too desperate to know what was really going on. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice sweet and polite. I glanced over at the couple again, trying to make sense of the situation. I didn't recognize either of them, but I was sure that Noelle would have told me if she was meeting someone here. I couldn't just stand around and wait for her to show up. No, I needed to confront this head-on. "I'm just waiting for someone," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Have you seen a woman with dark hair? She's about 5 feet 7 inches, maybe wearing a red jacket." The barista raised an eyebrow, then glanced around the cafe before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, I haven't seen anyone matching that description tonight." I felt a chill run through me. If Noelle wasn't here, then where was she? I started to feel a creeping sense of dread settling in. Had I made a mistake? Maybe she wasn't meeting anyone here after all. But if that was true, why had she said she needed space? Why hadn't she answered any of my calls? I turned to leave, but then, as I passed by the table in the corner, I caught sight of something that made my blood run cold. The woman at the table. She looked so familiar. Her face was partially obscured by the dim light, but there was something about her smile that hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze. It was Noelle. She was sitting across from a man I didn't recognize, her hand resting on the table, fingers lightly brushing against his. She was laughing, softly, intimately. My stomach twisted painfully as I watched them. Noelle's head tilted back as she laughed, a look of pure enjoyment on her face. The man leaned in closer, and she didn't pull away. She didn't even notice me standing there. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. All the questions I'd been asking myself, all the confusion and doubts, this was the answer. I watched as they continued their conversation, completely oblivious to my presence. Every laugh, every touch between them felt like a stab in my chest. I had been right to feel suspicious, but I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to see her like this, so comfortable, so carefree, with someone else. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. The anger surged through me, but I couldn't seem to pull myself away. I stood there, frozen in place, waiting for something to happen, waiting for Noelle to look up, to see me, to say something, to explain. But she didn't. Instead, the man across from her reached across the table and gently brushed his fingers against her cheek. She leaned into the touch, closing her eyes for a moment. And then, in that instant, everything became crystal clear. Noelle wasn't just out with a friend. She was with someone else. Someone who wasn't me. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. The world around me seemed to blur, the sound of the cafe fading into nothing. I was drowning in a sea of disbelief and anger. I had been right all along. She had been hiding something. No, someone, right under my nose. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Noelle was still laughing, her hand resting gently in the other man's, a tenderness in her touch that felt foreign. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, each beat a reminder that I wasn't part of this moment. She didn't even notice me standing there, my world crashing down around me. I forced myself to take a step back, retreating into the shadows of the cafe. I didn't know what to do, what to think. I wanted to shout, to confront her, but something held me back. What would I even say? How could I put into words the storm of betrayal raging inside me? I watched them for a while longer, hoping for some sign, something that would make sense of all this. But there was nothing. Just laughter and stolen glances, a quiet intimacy that I had never seen between Noelle and me. Finally, I turned and walked out of the cafe, my legs feeling like lead. The cold night air hit me hard as I stepped onto the street, and I just kept walking. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away. I ended up by the river, standing at the edge, the sound of the water crashing against the rocks beneath me. My mind was spinning. Was this all a misunderstanding? No, it couldn't be. The signs had been there all along. Her distance, her vague texts, the lies. It wasn't a mistake. Noelle had chosen someone else, and she hadn't even bothered to tell me. A part of me wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe she was just confused, maybe it wasn't serious. But deep down I knew. She was with him, and that was something I could never undo. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost didn't look. I knew it was her. Noelle, probably wondering where I was, maybe even feeling guilty for what I'd seen. But I had no interest in hearing her excuses. I pulled the phone out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from Noelle. Evan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed to find myself. Please, let's talk. My hands shook as I read the words. Let's talk? After everything? Was that it? After everything she had done, now she wanted to talk? I could feel the anger building, a fire igniting inside me. She didn't deserve my time. She didn't deserve my forgiveness. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear her side of the story. Not while my world felt like it was falling apart. But I had one choice left. I could either keep walking away, drown in my own thoughts, or face her. And for the first time in a long time, I knew what I had to do. I didn't want to face her. But as I stared at the screen of my phone, the message from Noelle blinking back at me, I knew I couldn't ignore her anymore. I had to know what had been going on, what she'd been hiding. I took a deep breath and typed out a response. Where are you? I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. My fingers still trembled slightly, my anger and confusion a storm that I could barely keep in check. It didn't take long for her reply. I'm at home. Please, come over. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. We need to talk. Those 4 words had never felt so loaded. It was the kind of line people used when they wanted to justify something, explain it away. And I knew it wouldn't be enough. I needed the truth, the whole truth. I didn't waste time thinking about it. I grabbed my keys and drove back to our apartment. Every mile felt heavier than the last. I wasn't sure if I was going back to get closure, to seek answers, or if I just needed to see her face to face to confirm what I already knew. When I arrived, Noelle's car was parked outside. I sat there for a moment, staring at the building. It was all so surreal. This wasn't how I'd imagined it. Not how I'd imagined any of this. I didn't want to go inside, but I had to. I walked up the stairs, my footsteps echoing through the quiet hall. When I reached our door, I hesitated, the weight of what was coming crashing down on me. But I knocked, 3 firm raps on the wood. It didn't take long before I heard the sound of locks clicking, and then the door opened. Noelle stood there, looking at me with wide eyes, her expression soft but unreadable. She was wearing a loose sweater and sweatpants, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired, defeated even, but there was something else there. Guilt. Evan, she said softly, as if unsure of how to begin. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant for it to happen like this. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I looked at her. My mind was racing, but I couldn't let her off the hook. Not yet. Not after everything. You never meant for it to happen? I repeated, my voice shaking. You mean, you didn't plan for me to find out? Or you didn't plan on lying to me for weeks? How long, Noelle? How long have you been seeing him? Her eyes flickered for a moment, like she was trying to find the right words. She took a step back, motioning for me to come inside. Please, come in. We need to talk. I shook my head. I don't want to sit down. I just want the truth. I want you to tell me everything. Now. Noelle closed her eyes, as though the weight of my words hit her all at once. When she spoke again, her voice was low, almost hesitant. It's not what you think, Evan. It's not like that. I wasn't sure what that meant. Not like what? So you're not cheating on me, then? You're not meeting him in secret, having dinner, laughing together like there's nothing wrong? Her face twisted in pain. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. I don't know how it happened. I took a step closer to her. Then tell me, how did it happen? Noelle swallowed hard. She seemed to gather herself for a moment, like she was bracing for the hardest part. It started a few months ago. I didn't know how to deal with everything, with how distant we'd become. You were always busy, always lost in your own world, and I felt alone. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I met him, Tom. He's a coworker. We started talking, and it felt like someone actually saw me. Someone who understood. The explanation hit me harder than I expected. So that's it. You started talking to him, and you felt seen? Is that what you're telling me? That you're doing this because I was too busy? I didn't mean to hurt you, she said again, her voice breaking. I never thought it would go this far. But it did, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. I couldn't. I could feel my anger rising, but something else was there too. Sadness, hurt. I didn't know what to believe. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of her words. But no matter what, I knew I couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, my voice shaking now. Why didn't you just talk to me about how you were feeling? Why lie? Why sneak around behind my back? Her face crumpled, and she wiped away a tear. I thought I could fix it on my own. I thought I could find my way back to myself before I told you. I didn't want to hurt you, Evan. I didn't know what else to do. I stood there, staring at her, feeling the weight of everything she'd just said. It felt like my world was unraveling in front of me, piece by piece. She wasn't the person I thought she was anymore. The person I trusted. I don't know what to do with this, Noelle, I said, my voice barely a whisper. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick with the weight of what had just been said, what had been broken. Noelle stood there, her eyes red from crying, her hands trembling slightly. I wanted to feel angry, but instead, I felt a deep, aching sorrow, a mix of betrayal and heartbreak that I couldn't quite shake. I'm sorry, Evan, she whispered again, her voice barely audible. I didn't want to lose you. The words stung, but I knew there was truth in them. She wasn't the first person to make a mistake, and in the chaos of everything, I had to remind myself that we were both human. That didn't make what she did right, but it didn't mean the end of us either. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, trying to think clearly. Noelle, I don't know if I can just forget this, I said, my voice steady despite the hurt. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to work through this with you. But you have to be honest with me from now on. We both need to start fresh. She nodded immediately, a tear slipping down her cheek. I'll do anything. I'll work through it. I swear. There was a pause. And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a small weight lift off my chest. It was the tiniest glimmer of hope, but it was enough to hold on to. I want to believe you, I said quietly, my heart pounding as I tried to understand what that might look like, what moving forward could mean. But it's not just about what you've done. It's about what we do next. We need to rebuild. We both need to change. She stepped toward me then, her hands reaching out, her voice more urgent now. I'm ready. I'm ready to make this work, Evan. I'm sorry it took this long to realize it, but I'm here. I'm here for us. I could see it in her eyes, the sincerity, the regret, but also a glimpse of hope. I could see that she wasn't just apologizing to get out of trouble. She was truly sorry, and for the first time in days, I believed that maybe, just maybe, we could make it through this. I reached out, taking her hands in mine, feeling the warmth of her touch. I don't know if we'll ever be the same, Noelle, but I'm willing to try. I still love you. I want to see if we can rebuild. And in that moment, it felt like something shifted. The anger, the sadness, the hurt, they weren't gone, but they no longer held the power to define us. We weren't perfect, but we were willing to face the imperfections together. Noelle squeezed my hands, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for giving us a chance." I smiled, even though it wasn't easy. "It's not going to be quick or easy, but we'll take it one day at a time." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I believed we could move forward. Maybe we wouldn't be the same as we were before, but maybe that was okay. Sometimes, rebuilding something broken can make it stronger, more resilient. And as we stood there, hands intertwined, I realized that the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning.